Welcome to your Inspirational Astrology Horoscope for Tuesday, April 1st, 2026. I'm Astrologer David Palmer, the Leo King, here to illuminate the collective consciousness. Well, it's Rabbit. It's the first day of the month. Make sure that you know what's going on by saying that, especially for this month of April. I know it's April Fool's Day. I might throw in an April Fool's joke when you don't even expect it. But it's good to be with you, of course. David Palmer, the Leo King, and I'm here for the full moon in Libra horoscope we're going to be covering today. If you're not on High Vibe TV, where I do these horoscopes every day, my deep astrology for the weeklies, of course, full disclosure with Natalie, definitely check it out, and the community and the apps that we've built for quite a long time now. This is going to be my 12th year since starting the first spiritual astrology video app. Kind of crazy. It is good to be with you, though, as we are approaching the month of April. That is going to be a hot one. And I know that it feels like, how in the heck could it get hotter? It's going to get hotter. It's the month where not only this full moon to start the month off brings all of it up, but it's a reminder. We have Uranus moving into Gemini at the end of this month. We have Mars going to move into Aries. And by the time that we get to the next lunar cycle, which is the new moon 2 weeks from now, we're going to have so much in Aries that it competes very close to the most planets we've seen aligned in one sign since all the planets in Pisces back in 2013. There's also just many other things going on in April as well. It is a month where every planet is direct. And we're going to have so much Aries, and we will finally be out of all of the Pisces planetary transits that, this whole idea of this new idea of a world, this new version of yourself will truly kick into gear. So I think it's very important to remember on this full moon in Libra that you really do that. Now, I always like to show a visual for the horoscopes I'm doing, and this one, of course, is the full moon in Libra. Thought I'd use the Camelot story of Lancelot and Guinevere. We got Merlin in the background too, hanging out, checking it all out. But what's interesting is, here we are with all this Aries, the quest of who we are, the warrior. Got to go on the quest. Up and look there's that full moon in Libra, opposite. Whoa. That beauty that we want in our life. And then the T-square to Jupiter, the wisdom of Merlin, who's kind of watching. We'll go back into this, but it's going to be an interesting full moon to say the least, because I know, yes, it's Libra. It's going to bring up relationships, and that's going to be a huge cornerstone to this horoscope. But in actuality, it's more than that. If anything, it's really the most important moments that this full moon brings up about, in my opinion, as an astrologer, how you set yourself up for the next 6,000 years. I know that's a long time away, but and a long period of time to set yourself up for. But this is a new world. The world is not going back to the way it ever was. And this is a horoscope that's going to bring up, yes, my inspirational take, but at the same token, I am going to bring up very uncomfortable things for people to hear in their personal lives. Let's take a look. So the full moon happening April 1st at 7:11 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. That'll be happening at 10:11 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Happening at 12 degrees of Libra and Aries. Now, that puts it in an approaching square to Jupiter. And that's where we're getting this T-square energy from. And it's an interesting one because it's the battle as well of the sun, of course, being in Aries, that's exalted, in Jupiter, that's exalted in Cancer. Although the sun in Aries is going to win, of course, because the moon is, it's dispositing well, and especially Venus is in Taurus, which Venus is beginning, it's approaching square to Pluto. So this is bringing up quite a lot here. And then if you think about Mars, well, Mars is in Pisces and Mars is the ruler of Aries, and that's the dispositor, and it's cutting out the bullshit. So the first thing I want to say is all this energy that we've had in Aries that's come in, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction on February 20th. Of course, we've seen the Sun-Saturn make the conjunction with Neptune, of course, over the last week and a half. And we're at this place now where the eclipses are done. All the planets are finally direct, but there's gaps. And it's this full moon, this energy that we're reaching towards for beauty. And then there's this physical aspect to it. The Venus and Taurus, 2 degrees, 59 minutes, beginning and approaching square to Pluto in Aquarius. It's like we want the tangible, beautiful thing. We want that thing to finally just arrive into our life. At the same token, it's the squares to Jupiter with this full moon we want our cup fully filled. Although I'm going to say this is where it feels all empty. It tweaks with our belief systems. Like, is there anything that's going to finally bring that beauty into my life and that I can emotionally feel? But this is the journey that's really based upon if we are truly who we actually are in every situation in our life. It's like, am I this? Is this who I am? And where it gets very uncomfortable is, and I know that I'm bringing it throughout kind of this week, but seeing this full moon in Libra that will eventually go into Scorpio as Venus will then square Pluto and create a massive T-square. Then the sun, by the end of this week, in square to Jupiter. Are you really ever going to get what you really want if you can't accept what is not you that you're trying to be in the lens of and going after to try and manifest things? This Venus in Taurus is very important. Venus is the ruler of Libra, and it's in its home sign of Taurus, the other sign that it rules over. And so our value systems are coming into this hard clash with Pluto. And Pluto in Aquarius here is like, well, in order to get what you really want, you're going to have to try in a different way. You're going to have to also learn to see the truth of where is their connection and not. Uranus is in Taurus and it's finishing out, right? We're getting ready for Uranus and Gemini by April 25th for me on the West Coast, but for most of the world, the 26th. It's just 3 weeks away and some change. But Venus is with Uranus again right before it comes into Gemini like it did last year. Venus also is at the exact opposition points to where Venus is going to retrograde in about 7 months in Scorpio that it does every 8 years, and then it'll retrograde back into Libra. And so Venus is in this really weird pocket of that opposition point, and it is slowing down 2 seconds, every day. So if you just see the next day, 2 minutes. If you see the next day, 2 minutes. And so this is where you can track Venus in your life. And it's so important to right now with this full moon in Libra, because if you really think about what's happening, this is all stuff you've been through every 8 years. The setup to what comes up, let's say 6 months from now. And whether it has the embodiment of that truth or not, and are these things that we're wanting to connect with in relationships, are we willing to share the same values? And that's difficult. With Uranus and Taurus, it's almost kind of feels like impossible. But it's more of even deeper than that, because there's a little bit of this deeper understanding about survival for the future. Pluto survival, but if you think about in human design, we're leaving the cross of planning and moving into the cross of the rising of the sleeping phoenix. survival is going to be the name of the game for the next 400 years. So who in our lives is willing to share, quite literally share? Everybody's so obsessed almost like on the material plane. The South Node being in Virgo is a problem because everybody thinks, well, once I become this person in this kind of boxed way, like once I've got my schooling done and I've got my job, and once I've gotten off that and done this, and right, then I'm okay and then I'm good. Well, we're in a world where is anything operating normal? No. So there's a vulnerability to this full moon of like, you're only going to attract the energy of the frequency that you're at. And the more vulnerable you are in the honest place of where you're at emotionally and accepting who you are as this is where I am and this is what's happened. And we're all going through major transitions. Pluto has been in a sextile to Saturn. Now we saw that last year, but this is the end of this transit. And the next time we see Saturn and Pluto in a positive aspect is literally when Saturn comes into Gemini, which is a long fucking time away. So it's a lot like radiation to our lives and just burn, like taking everything away. And there's all this Aries resetting the stage for you in your life. And if you're honestly being yourself, but this also is Venus and square to Pluto. So there's this deep desire and value and want and need and attraction. And if it's there or if it's not. I think what's hard is that this full moon reminds me of like, you know what? It's uncomfortable to face the truth that the journey is calling me to be the warrior of who I really am. And this is what Saturn and Neptune, the sun, Chiron, Eris, all are about. And with Mars on its approach, as we're coming closer, we're about a week and a half, 2 weeks away from Mars and Aries, right? You can't come into all this energy that we're going to be coming into in April and lie to yourself and be like, you know what? It's uncomfortable. I'm too entrenched with Mars and Mercury still here in Pisces. I'm too entrenched in situations that are going to be uncomfortable, even though it's not me. And the number one problem here is I am going to suffer for another person. I'm going to suffer my needs and what I actually am, my values that aren't being seen, my energy I'm putting in, and do I get anything back? These are going to be very sensitive spots for people. And learning to accept that and surrender to it. Like, okay, that's what it is. But people are going to entrench actually into what feels more safe, which ironically is going to be the tower that will fall in your life, right? Like the safest route actually is the route where, fuck, I'm going to have to connect to my value. And there is some other way. This is complicated. This is different. This might also be shocking for some, but you know, the way things are aligning, especially into the summer, that new world, you do not want to enter that and be carrying dead weight of things that do not align with you. You know, Libra is about, yes, balance and harmony, but that has to come from also a state of that you as an individual are fully who you are and that you have matched with somebody who them and themselves have defined who they fully are. And I know that's some basic shit, but you have to look at it as it feels weird because the true energy, and this is where our senses are off. If you're looking in the five senses, it's that higher sense that is calling our name. And I think this full moon is saying, I can't just only suffer so somebody else could be happy, but at the same time, I cannot settle. Really, the negotiation, the diplomat. Remember, the full moon is not where to go, especially with the South Node being in that direction, okay? This is the illusion. I'm going to create peace right now. I'm going to just pick the peaceful, safe road. And Even though I'm being barraged with unfairness, being treated like shit, not even having my values be seen, and trying to, and this is where the square of Taurus and Aquarius gets so interesting, especially with Venus Pluto, is I'm going to keep adjusting my values for other people because I'm afraid that people may not accept me into the box of society that everybody's trying to live in and the perfectionism that everybody's obsessed with. And what do you have if you do that? Nothing. You're an empty vessel. Now, Mercury in Pisces, we've seen fucking for almost like 2 months now. The worst place for it to be. And this is the third trine to Jupiter that's in approach as well. So if you notice every transit that's with this full moon, including the full moon itself in the T-square to Jupiter, the Venus square Pluto, the Mercury trine Jupiter, everything's in an approaching transit, meaning within the margin of those 3 degrees, and they're all approaching, meaning that this full moon is carrying a lot with it of transferring of energy that's moving forward to enact situations, especially with every planet direct. But with Mercury trine Jupiter, there's that higher sense of like, I've seen the vision of what I'm feeling. Am I crazy to see this higher spiritual plane that I know is actually where the comfort is, and I have to embody into that fully? You can't be worried about how is it going to disrupt people when it's your emotional state, your own wants and needs and desires in your life. That does not ruin people. I did it's kind of funny, but I did when I was at Conscious Life Expo, 3 years ago at the 2023 one, I did this one prophecies one. It was when I was doing all that John Dee and Nostradamus work. And I said the best joke about what's the difference between a prophecy and a prediction. And I said, well, a prediction is when you can, as an astrologer, predict like, yeah, your girlfriend's cheating on you. And, I forgot the joke, but it was so fucking good. I was like, yeah, it's not so much about whether something was on him, but who's in her or something like that. It was a fucking good one. But anyway, the long story short is like your effect on another and an effect of somebody else on you is not a prophecy because it's not affecting the world. Like the world is not affected by if you got duped into not being who you are, truly, and giving away and conceding to all of these things to where you're actually not getting anything back in return. You're just really holding space for the other, or you're holding space in a way that you're actually giving your whole life force away. And in a weird way, believing that you can nurture your way through it when you can't. And it could be a rude awakening that comes in ways that you never expect in life. But how are we going to move forward in the way that the world is at this moment? And all believe that, with resources. So this is the other thing that this Venus-Pluto square brings up. And it might be a full moon in Libra, but yes, relationships are important. But as an astrologer, it's very interesting because it's like we need to look at Venus. Oh, it's in square to Pluto. Okay. And Venus is in its home sign. Okay. Well, when it comes to resources, how well are we going to have to learn to start sharing? If you think about gas, what's happening in Asia, this is the last week where oil is coming to Asia because those boats were already sent out weeks ago. And there's no more oil for Asia in a week. And then in 2 weeks, it hits the EU. To me, it's like these relationships you start building in your life, like if they can't even share understanding who you are, not trying to put you in a box. If you don't know how to do that to the other person either, how well are you going to do when it comes to we need to figure out how to share gasoline? We need to figure out how to share this resource. I mean, we are kind of coming into Mad Max world in 2027. But there'll be cool inventions that will take us into a new world, but it will not be this plane of existence that we've all known. That's over. And this is all right before, because there's been a lot of stagnation to get to this point, even with all the planets direct and now all this new Aries shit. It's like, yeah, fuck yeah, here we are. But really, what is it happening? Well, it's Saturn, it's Neptune. We're kind of lost in time. And Mercury's still in fucking Pisces with Mars. Well, in the weeks ahead, that's going to change. And so, dare I say there's a bit of a ripcord happening with this full moon of shit, I do not want to end up spending a slowing Venus. And you have to remember, it's not just when Venus finally enters into Scorpio and then stations retrograde in October. It's slowing down this whole period till then to where it goes down to slowing to nothing. And then it goes backwards. And then, of course, we have the Cazimi. And then we have the station direct in Libra. And then we got to see it come back. And then it won't. So we're not going to see a Venus at its normal speed till 2027. So you can either right now nip it in the butt and explore the true, honest version of who you really are and what really is there to connect with in life, or lie to yourself and wait every Venus retrograde in fucking Scorpio to find out the revelation of the truth of what really goes on. And when it's always after Venus leaves Scorpio and it comes into Sag that you start realizing the story's way different and this is what really came out. And it either builds it or it destroys it. I always find that those that are in the empty space during a Venus retrograde year in Scorpio in the spring and have been honest with themselves and cleared out all the remnants of relationships and situations where this is not who I am, and have left all those, get into the best situations ever. The ones that come into this moment, and especially the last time we had this full moon in Libra with a Jupiter in Cancer, was when Pluto was in Capricorn and this was an eclipse, and it was a fucking holy fuck April eclipse that was probably the roughest eclipse of the last 12 years that this is bringing up. And there was a Venus retrograde in Capricorn that year, if you don't remember. Man, I've been doing this shit way too long. That was the beginning of 2014. And then Jupiter was in Capricorn, the opposition. And then, of course, oh, fuck. You got fucking Mars that retrograded in Libra. I can't believe people don't remember all that shit. But, last time we had this full moon with a square to Jupiter was actually a very extreme time that actually was fuck, what's really going on? And I think a lot of relationships at that time were more lost than ever. This one is really lost if you're continuing to identify not as who you really are and conceding to I need to concede this, I need to concede that, and to where you're actually just not able to actually do the quest or do the thing you really want to be. And you've stripped down to a version of yourself that isn't even what you could really call yourself. That's where it gets dangerous, and trying to then, I'm going to keep it's safe though. Well, it's not safe. Sure, we call it toxic, but this Mercury is in trine to Jupiter for the third time, and it's our only hope. And that poor little Mercury is not really the most hopeful thing in Pisces. But at least it's vulnerable with Jupiter here to be like, you know what, I'm lost. And Jupiter's kind of mothering us through our mind to be like, what you're feeling and sensing is true. Oh, okay. For real? Yes. Keep. That's the only way Mercury can make it through. Right? It can't use its ears. It's in the oceans. Right? It's not really flying. Hermes is kind of like, got his wings wet. So you gotta start thinking, am I crazy to feel what is off and not me? That's what to focus on, not where do I continue to concede who I am for temporary safety. That's an illusion. To try and keep the hamster wheel running, South Node in Virgo, and not step into the most powerful version of myself I've ever been. This is the restart we've all waited for multiple, hundreds of, God knows, depending on the soul of you are, thousands of past lives. We've waited for this moment. When it comes to what we connect with in our job, what we connect with in all the places that we put value on. It even comes up to where, and how we make money, right? That this full moon is bringing up that a new order has to take place within ourselves of like this explorative nature into new technologies, trying things out that are radically different with Venus, using your tools in ways you've never used before, or at least continuing to enhance them and still kind of go up the fucking chutes and ladder different. The difference with this, though, is there is no more Capricorn. We're done. There's nothing major for the rest of our lives going into Capricorn. So this is not about, well, what's the best, long-term goal solution here? What's the best for my job? It really actually comes to this Cancer energy of like, is this the quest that actually gives me something that is worth being, that actually allows me to be myself fully? No longer can we be in a world where you have to concede who you are and lay down your sword. And I think we're seeing this in the gender bias shit, in the feminist movement, and the over toxic masculine movement, and which role people have to be and how extreme it becomes, and everybody looking at each other like, well, you're not doing this and you're not doing that, and this is the way to do this and this is the way to do that. It's more of the shocking moment of like, I see you as who you are and you as you are. And the acceptance of this is who you are. And I like you because that's who you are. And I like me for who I am. Not, well, you're not checking all the Virgo lists South Node off, trying to fit in a box, and then with Venus and Pluto in square, comparing like, well, what is everybody on social media doing? Or what does that couple do? Or what does that relationship look like? Or what does this relationship to their job look like? This is where you have to say, I am not following what everybody does. My values here are important. My skill set is what innovates here, not who's going to show me how to do it. And I let go of my values and actually try and adjust them to be like everyone else, which becomes kind of cult-like, right? Like, well, all these people are doing relationships that way, or all these people are doing it this way. I think it's going to be, I'm not going to do my whole deep astrology because it's on high vibe, but if you look at the rest of this week after this full moon, like this is where it's your last effort to disconnect from values and things that you emotionally desire and where it's not being met. And you can't lie. These fixed areas that truly are wanting to share energy and wanting to manifest into the physical plane that we all desire. But, being in a hollow situation is really because you've hollowed yourself out. And then there's some who are like, I feel full as fuck. Well, how much have you hollowed out of that person? And you don't pay attention to that. So when we talk about equality, fairness, it actually is about if you're being fair to yourself, if you're being honest with yourself, if you're judging yourself correctly with all these patterns and learning to break these cycles in yourself and break these patterns that have kept you on a loop. And if you're worried about, well, my girlfriends won't talk to me because if I change that, then we won't have this, or we live in Idaho and everybody's moving to Idaho. And, all these things are useless to who you are. You're identifying yourself off a location. Aries defines itself first off the person, a noun. So the person has to come before the place or the thing. And so, you have to get back to like, am I this or am I the fucking weird old looking like thimble and fucking Monopoly? Is that what I am? Am I stuck in Monopoly world and I have to always identify? And man, Monopoly takes everything from you. And I got to be this piece and I'm getting lucky if I pass go and collect $200 once in a while. Like, but the problem with this is it gives people this feeling of utility when really this is like the most extreme Aries transit we've ever seen in 6,400 years. And you've got a Mars in Pisces trying to help you define who you are so it knows what to cut out of your life and surrender out. But your personal issues are not destroying the world or people by what your actual true self is and actually becoming that, because that's who you have to become. There is no, well, I gotta keep holding the fort for this energy that maybe one day, and I'm telling you, the idea of maybe one day it will change. We're in a world where that's gone. That change will take years. Now, not whenever Neptune was in Pisces, right, it feels like change could happen in the middle of a moment and people change their minds and whoop. That's why when you see the way that the concrete of Saturn starts setting in Aries, no, if it's going to be red, it's going to be red. Okay. Don't try and change the color on me. Like Neptune's like, well, can we change the colors? And Saturn's like, no, you pick a color that you dream of and I can make that happen, but it's got to stay that way. And so you have to look at it as like, this is where 2020 and this whole concrete that was drying and where you got stuck, right? This is your moment where before the world gets into, it's not so much stuck, but limited amount of options. Because that's what this sun is going to realize in the square to Jupiter and this full moon in square to Jupiter is that there's only so many actual options of being your true self. And what are the costs that you're willing to take? Is it worth it to make the investment into actually ascending and evolving now into the best moment in history to actually be the highest version of yourself? To actually then bring in all the opportunities that are limited in scope because of the way the world is going to be so focused and so defined in these areas But are you setting yourself up for failure if you don't invest into yourself because you think, well, there's not going to be many options, so I'm picking this option already, and I've already chosen it before even getting here? The idea of coming into all this Aries means we make the choices now. All the stuff in Pisces is what's being kicked out, or what was the illusion, or what was the end of the story. The beginning of new stories is what this is beginning to embark and understand, and where that can lead to. But if you're still caught up in the I've already made my choice and I'm already locked in, you're an idiot. The world is going to change faster than you've ever seen in your life in April. There is no things will slow down and things will calm down and then things will retreat back and we're all just going to kumbaya in April. The quite opposite. So are you being fair and just and being a good judge of your own character? And are you being fair and just to others if you cannot be the version of yourself that you truly need to be? Now, the irony in that question is, do people actually want you to be that? Because that's going to be that version that really hits people, right? Like, and going back to my Venus retrograde Scorpio years, if you come into the spring and a Venus retrograde in Scorpio year, last one was 2018, go back 2010, 2002, just keep going back every 8 years, okay? In the same Venus position, okay? We're in that zone. This is why the Mayans used Venus, okay? It's the only planet where it's like, I can look at the date on a calendar and I can see Venus at the same degree. We're in that zone. Okay, we're in that zone for this next 6 months where it's a repeating pattern every time, every 8 years. And in Scorpio, where Venus is at its detriment, are you going to be a detriment to your values when right now this is the peak of it, but it's in square to Pluto and Pluto's doing a big check? Hey, let's try a different route. Because do you just want to keep doing the same thing over and over again? Do you still want to feel like you're going to ascend to a better place and the relationship will go better, or your values will get met when you're doing the same thing again and you're conceding again and you're too afraid to pull the ripcord in life? Because what? The number one thing that Aquarius and Taurus get along with is if the value is so high, then you are willing to disconnect when the value that's lower is making an offer or not showing up of value. Then you pull the ripcord. You disconnect. But people are too afraid of that. And what's the number one issue of this full moon? Your beliefs, your religious beliefs. Well, God says, well, is that really what God said? I'm a believer that God wants us to be the best version of ourselves, to help and to do the greatest deeds and to help others and to be in happiness. And that's what changes the planet. Not, I'm here to fucking suffer. Because if I just use the Jesus thing, didn't Jesus already die and suffer for us already, or for our sins? Ironically, it's the funniest stuff is like, the sins of Jesus really are being spiritual, right? Doing the work that the old, I'm not even going to get into all that shit, but, oh, he's using fucking these magical powers that are fucking bad. They come from fucking the old fucking Babylon shit. And when you get this Jupiter in Cancer, it's like, are your emotions just like, I just want to keep nurturing something that's not me, that's actually not, and attraction's going to come up and your actual needs for this stuff, because it is Pluto and square to Venus, but it's also, as the moon's going to leave Libra and come into Scorpio in the days that follow when Venus does square Pluto, that T-square is kicking off this, like, in this very rare zone of where Venus retrograde will be at 8 degrees, coming back in the Libra in the next 7 months. And Venus is in the opposite point. So when Venus passes that 8th degree, it leaves that zone and it's slowing down, and it's trackable to your 2018, your 2010 by the day. You could just go back on a calendar and be like, what was I doing? What was I doing? And the same stuff's coming up during this full moon, right? Like, what were you doing in the spring of 2018 with your relationships? Was the writing on the wall, something was off? Well, then it's going to be off in 7 months. You might as well use this Pluto, which is the newer, higher understanding of astrology in Aquarius, right? And use astrology in this higher form of, like, you know what? Instead of going through the same fucking pattern, if you're in a relationship right now and it's not working and it's not good, you're an idiot. Because in 7 months, I guarantee you, you're going to try everything you can through sex, through whatever, to try and repair it, and it will break. By the time that we get to 2027, it'll break, and it'll be the same feeling again. In 2010, we didn't have that Uranus in opposition. We didn't have any of that, but we did have these Jupiter-Uranus energies that moved into Aries and went back into Pisces, right? And we've seen that with Saturn and Neptune. And so this is repeating that one a little bit more. But what's interesting is, like, if you are not in a relationship and you've just finally determined who you fully are, then your life will rocket ship. And by that Venus retrograde, you'll actually be intertwined with the real thing. But you're not going to hear that anywhere else. Like, watch. I like to get a little nerdy. What's today? April 1st. April 1st, 2018. I have fun going through my like my photos or whatever to see, and I'll actually move this up at the top of the chart so you can see it better. Moving it by hour back. Okay. Where's Venus in square to Pluto at 2 degrees, right? Oh, April 1st, 2018, Venus 2 degrees Taurus. Okay, so if I just take you just down, let's do 2 weeks from now. Okay, Venus 19 degrees on the 15th of April. And let's actually do that new moon that's going to come with all those planets in Aries. Okay. All right. Back then, that was Sun, Uranus, and the conjunction that was about to happen in Aries. And it was the moon in Taurus with Venus. Okay. Interesting. North node Leo. We're about to see the node shift at this summer, right as we get into the summer. And the same nodes just flipped. Now, Venus retrogrades and nodes don't have a perfect sync. So when you do get them synced, it's rare. Makes it more potent. So now we'll just save that for later. Okay. Now, let's just change the date. 21 degrees Taurus, right? Let's just change the date to 2026. When all that shit, there it is, 2218, 21, it was like 21, like 50. It's within a hair. It's the same fucking degree. Okay? Because on that day, technically, if you look at a calendar, when you rise that morning, there's Venus 21 degrees. Okay? and look at all the planets in Aries. And there's Uranus at the end of Taurus. What's interesting, though, is that you could look at your fucking phone and go, April 17th, 2018, April 17th, 2010 on your BlackBerry, if you saved all that shit, or your Facebook, and you go, oh shit. That you're in the loading zone right now of what you choose from now until the end of this week, which would be Tuesday next week when Venus comes to 7 and comes to 8. And then now it goes into this zone where it's so trackable, you're in a repeating cycle. So are you going to repeat the cycle? Because by the time that we actually reach April 17th, this is what competes with the 2013 of the most planets in one sign that was in Pisces. The reason why this one doesn't win is because they don't count Eris. And Venus was in with Pisces during the fucking one that happened in 2013. So that one technically wins. Although there's a node here, a north node in Pisces. So the node's not there. But Neptune, Mercury, Mars, Saturn, that's 4 planets. The sun and the moon, that's 6. Now, Chiron, and then Eris is right there. To me, it's equal. But what's more powerful is that the one in Pisces that happened back in 2013 had Neptune the ruler. Well, guess who's got the ruler again? The Aries one, Mars. With, though, the sun that's exalted, but also Venus was there and Venus is exalted. So they're equal. But this is a different, look at the way that this is set up. Your life is getting the biggest reset ever. Your relationships, your values is about to go through the greatest shift of the Rubicon ever if you actually can evolve into actually owning your true value of who you really are instead of, you know what, I'm going to settle for shit. Now you're talking to a moon in Taurus at 28:50 fucking 4 minutes who literally has Uranus on his moon right now. And this weekend is my last conjunction of it exact. I will never settle when I am disrespected, that I am not valued, and I will not change my values to get treated like shit in life. I will not be able to be an oak that can hold stability if I fucking move my fucking tree of stability every which fucking way for other people's fucking happiness without it being a good deal that's applying value for both sides. And this is going to be Mars and Saturn, right? I was born with that, but in Scorpio conjunct. The malefics. Are you a savage in the best way possible about you are so focused you know who you are? This isn't about ego either. This is about the true identity of who you are, not the egoic self that's just in for selfish gain and no empathy. No, you need to have empathy for others, but the main thing is you have to have empathy for yourself. Neptune in Aries is I have to have empathy for myself here. Am I not who I really am? And I'm just lying to myself and I'm just continuing to pick all these cycles where I don't get seen at all, or I get trashed upon, or I'm just not, I take part of who I am and I push it to the side to better others. And people might think that's people pleasing, but that is not people pleasing. That is you diminishing your light. And so to me, this is the full moon of you either are coming through this April fully ready for the most wild and magical experience where God's vision and dream is bigger than your own. And you can sense that in the sixth sense world, and you place yourself in a position for that to happen because you choose yourself. You're not going to settle and especially when there's no attraction, you're not getting any of the energy that is equal back. And you have to hold yourself at the highest value and stop trying to be, well, what is everyone else doing? Or what's the newest thing and everybody on TikTok doing or whatever. That is your fucking kill zone for your own self. And this new world that's going to be so radically different that whatever you're bringing into it and you think it will survive, it will not. Especially the harder you grip in a Venus retrograde Scorpio year, the more it will feel like the worst pain of your life when it gets ripped away. Especially now with Pluto in Aquarius, this will be the first Venus retrograde in Scorpio to square Pluto in Aquarius. That's more intense because Pluto's the ruler of Scorpio. So the most intense Venus retrograde in Scorpio has already locked itself in. The planets, Venus, I would say, has the clearest of all the planets of locking itself in. Of course, every 9 months shifting, but every 18 months coming in, the 6 months that lead into the retrograde, it's already clicking in the same place it does every 8 years. In the cycle of Venus, in the sign, in the area of the side of the space and where it does the Venus star points. In the Cazemis that are with Venus passing in front of Earth. So this full moon in Libra is a lot more than just, well, yeah, it's about relationships and the square to Jupiter and what do I deserve emotionally and all, you know. It's, are you a retard? Because you just continue to not know how to truly identify who you are. And there's gaps right now for all of us of what this new world looks like. But it'll be filled with when you actually can envision the beauty because you are willing to retain the value and own the full version of who you are and no longer settle. And actually be ready for the universe to surprise the shit out of you, because that's what the Pluto and Aquarius square to Venus and Taurus is like the value you want will show up in the most radically different way than the traditional way you thought. If you were a farmer and you always are growing, I don't know, corn, well, out of nowhere, how in the fuck did that beanstalk come up a fucking whatever? You know, it's like an alien seed that got dropped out of nowhere. That's what relationships and all the things that you want to manifest are going to be because you're in alignment. And everything now has to be in alignment from the viewpoint of, are you restricting yourself? The problem with Saturn and Aries is, I'm going to restrict myself. Add Chiron. I'm going to restrict myself. And you know what? I'm going to just continue to victimize my own self by continuing to feel like I'm not allowed to be who I really am. Because that'll affect the other. That will affect this. That will affect that. You can't get mad at somebody if they don't want to be with you. If they don't want to be with you, bye. Okay. Message heard. That's the only shock. The weirder part is when they start going into crazy land. But you can't be concerned about that because you know how you deal with crazy people? You don't feed it. And so, to me, this is like look at the world. You really think it's just going to stop? And I'm just talking about April. I'm not even looking farther than that. It is not going to stop. So you better start making your choices fucking now. What was the big lesson of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction? Now that we're in the Saturn-Pluto sextile finishing. Why did so many people realize, why was I doing this in my life? This was my purpose, though, and all, right? And there were so many people who broke up. There were so many people who realized I should have never done this job. I should have never done this. Right? So now that it's sextile, it's like, here's your opportunity. People thought that was the opportunity then. Saturn, Pluto is more like, no, this shit's rough. Here it is. And here's that platform that you better start understanding. We're at the sextile now, and it's ending this week. So this is your last week to make the biggest changes to your structure of your life and make choices that actually are for the best for your future and not be so emotionally lost in them. Because Jupiter is here to expand your emotional capacity, to actually go on the quest of not the search for the feeling, but the quest of knowing that that feeling will arrive, that you don't even know fully what it will be, because you've set yourself correct on the journey. It's a lot like finding the Holy Grail. Hence, the original person who searched for the Holy Grail. This actually goes back to my talks back in 2021 of what was the problem with Guinevere and Lancelot, is that they weren't honest to King Arthur and just been like, hey, actually, you tried to kill her because you thought that was her twin sister who's fucking psychotic. And I saved her, and then we went and eloped, and we came back and chose Camelot because we're too afraid. We feel like we need Camelot in order to become who our identity is. So the problem is, well, this city, this state, this relationship that I have, this job I have, this is what defines who I am, when that is actually not what it is. And relationships fall into this trap all the time. Like, well, actually, we have a thing, but, you know, there's all this shit out there that defines me more. And then what happens is, in their story, they choose to elope in secret. So when he goes to look for the Holy Grail and he arrives, what do the angels tell him? Sorry. So he finds it. But you're not a pure soul. Really, what they're saying is you're not fully you. So his son is the one, Galahad, who goes on the quest and never got into any of those messes because he learned from his father. And guess what? That's who finds the Grail. And that's why Merlin is watching, you know. And this is a repeat of Camelot for all of us. If you're the King Arthur, are you going to fucking just play oblivious and be friends with the person fucking your wife? If you're Guinevere, are you going to, well, he's the king and, you know, I don't want to like disturb that, but I'm going to fuck his best friend? That's what ruined Camelot. That's what ruins countries, nations, Illuminati. It's created off these people who elope in secret because they can't be their authentic true selves. And they play the fake roles in relationships. They play, and so everything that you see, from an Epstein file to a war in Iran right now to everything, is all off the moment when you don't choose yourself and another doesn't choose themselves. And then together you guys don't choose each other because you wanted to be defined by status and not by the quest of the unknown. But what is known is what this is and who I am, and what is not, and getting rid of what is not. It would have been a pretty easy negotiation with Arthur to be like, hey, you tried to kill your wife. I ended up saving her, and you wanted her dead. She came with me to my castle. I turned on, I was about to say like a record player, but back then it would have been like, I called some of the fucking blue jay birds up in my tree that was on my third floor of my tower. And we looked out the window and they started singing. And the next thing you know, she just looked so good in that dress. I mean, she just fucking thought I was such a badass because I actually can kill people and I'm a fucking the leader of all the fucking round table. that I ended up taking her on my horse down to the round table and fucking her on the round table. And we fell in love. And that's what it is. If they would have said that, and like, if you don't want us in Camelot, okay. But if you know the story deeper, why does Merlin team up with Lady of the Lake and bring Lancelot of Fond du Lac from France as a baby and transfer him into the situation? That we got to look at all this Pisces magic as Merlin has brought in with Lady of the Lake, all of us to really be the Lancelot that disrupts the situation, right? And what do we choose? We be authentic to what we are. You know, before Michael Luton passed away, I've shown it a lot, but I can't get it out of my mind that his visual for Pluto and Aquarius that he told the world for the next 20 years would be, he shows this, all these people wrapped up in this really weird way. And he's like, it gets really complicated. Meaning the scenarios that we're entering into now are like not when it's like, well, I met this person on Tinder or whatever, but kind of the randomness of the universe and how things come together with people and how they also break things apart. And the more that you obsess over the way it should be, the more it pieces the fuck out. So, this full moon's a lot bigger than just, well, maybe this brings in a relationship. Jeez. It really is bringing into the spirit of, this was the night version I did for Deep Astrology. And Merlin in the back here. But, really Camelot is the story of Merlin watching for the future of when it would come to repeat again. And these are the choices we're all going to have to make that are not easy, but they're not hell. If anything, it's you choosing to be in hell by the time that Venus will come into Scorpio in retrograde 7 months from now. And that's up to you in this moment, this week, in this full moon. Whatever reservations you have about being yourself, and then when it does finally at one point get to relationships, wherever those reservations are, and you actually are in your full self, that's a lot easier to overcome than I'm in a horrible situation that I feel like I can't get out of, and I've diminished myself so much, and that's what makes you feel stuck. And then Jupiter in Cancer is, okay, you learn the experience of where you're emotionally not happy. Great, that was a fun experience. And now here it comes into Leo. And then it will oppose Pluto and Aquarius. But I have all this experience I want to go experience with happiness, but it requires a disconnection, and it requires all these things. And that's what's coming up in just months ahead, right? And I already showed you what Venus is tracking and doing. I mean, it's kind of interesting for me, just interestingly enough, I know there's a lot of people my age. I'm 41. I'm born in 1984. So like 2002 was the year I graduated high school. Well, that one was a breakup for me because I went into the Navy. 2010, I was famous on reality TV, and then I got in a famous relationship. 2018, I ended up going through a famous divorce. So, for me, it's like maybe because I'm an astrologer and I watch it all the time, I'm just like, oh, okay. But I think people need to look at it a lot deeper, because that's where Venus retrogrades back into Libra. And so this full moon is like, because it's ruled by Venus and Venus is in the place it is and it's in square to Pluto, it's preparing us for Venus retrograde that like takes, if you really look at all these years of every 8 years of Venus retrograde in Scorpio, and the Libra, remember, is the new thing, right? Venus used to retrograde in just Scorpio. Then it got added into Libra a couple cycles ago. So like it covers also one of the most intense areas and dangerous areas in the skies. The end of Libra into Scorpio in Western, it's dangerous. Especially when you're not who you really are and you're aligned with energy that's like a vampire, like sucking your life from you. And I think people have to ask themselves that right now. And with the world changing the way it is this really what you really thought? And you have to be honest with yourself, because so much is going to come up this week. And with this full moon, with Mars being in Pisces, with Mercury in trine to Jupiter, with the sun squaring Jupiter, with the moon, of course, full moon squaring Jupiter, with Venus and Pluto in square, like these big approaching energies of like, you're approaching whether or not you're going to truly be yourself or not, whether you're going to actually allow yourself to really receive and give back values with a person that actually maybe not be fully equal in the way that you think, but be the exchange that feels like this is fucking, I feel felt and valued and appreciated. And I love giving that back to another. And we're on that same click. And we're on the adventure of that we're safe no matter what, because we're fully identified individually of who we are. And we're willing to go on that quest to explore where that ends up, that we're all, dare I say, going to be displaced in a weird way in the years to come to figure out where home really is. Who do you want to do that with? And all the pomp and show and propaganda of these last, 15 to 20 years is coming to an end. So did you base it all off that? And now you wake up and then go, well, no, let me just turn that off. That the strongest people that are going to make it through this are the ones that really are not afraid and have compassion for themselves for honestly being who they really are and not lying to other people and lying to themselves, the main part, and just being like, no, I'm cool. I'm all right. And that's where the missed opportunity will feel huge. That sixth sense going off that you're going to miss the opportunity of your life by feeling trapped in something that you are like, there is no way ever out. And there's no respect. There's no exchange of values and appreciation. And there is no attraction. There is no chemistry. Ironically, Pluto in Aquarius is chemistry, especially ironically, Pluto is about sexual energy. And in Aquarius, it's actually chemistry, right? Sexual chemistry that actually is about this soul's frequency is evolving as much as I'm evolving. That's really what the equality we're looking for is. Not, well, I'm doing this and they're doing that and they're on their journey and I'm on my journey. But we're really just splitting. And one person's on Pythagorean or the most common newest version of 1564, which would be John Dee's version, 1500 years later, of the path on the Y of spiritual, or are you a tyrant to spirit? It's going to be one person is always in those situations I just named, like you think it's good, but you're actually split. And one's on the spiritual path and the other's the tyrant and lost in the abyss of manifestation, money, physicality, trying to fit in the box, and ends up in the abyss of the anxiety that they don't ever fit in the world and nobody sees them the way they want to. And they try so hard to be seen. And And I guess I would show you the last chart to remind you of 2014 when we had Jupiter in Cancer. And the full moon in Libra. With the Mars retrograde, with Pluto, like here it was, just I missed it by a couple of days, but the last time you had a full moon in Libra, sorry, I'm not using my Astral Gold on my Mac. I didn't pull these charts ahead. But here it is, right? The full moon in Libra conjunct the North Node. So this was a lunar eclipse. It was conjunct Mars retrograde that was in square to Jupiter in Cancer. This was April 15th. Watch my horoscope on YouTube for this. You can type in the Leo King, April 15th, 2014 eclipse. You'll see me outside in Hollywood filming the blood fucking moon on the side of the street. It was Mercury conjunct Uranus. It was the sun, of course, at 25 degrees. And there was the opposition and the T-square with that Pluto and that Jupiter and Mars retrograde and Mercury, Uranus, and square to Jupiter, Pluto, and Mars. And so it was like, you can use the Venus retrograde path and you'll get a lot. The other path is the last full moon we had with Jupiter in Cancer was a lunar eclipse, and it was Mercury, Uranus, square Pluto. It was square Jupiter, and it was opposite Mars retrograde. It was, I have to elevate and figure out who I am right now. And this was not a time to be in a relationship. If you were in a relationship during this time, idiot. I was single. And I knew that because of this astrology. It's like, fucking no way. And that was Venus that was just finally in Pisces after being retrograde in Capricorn that we started that 2014 off with. With Pluto. So now everything's on this Aries side. Now there's no more opposition from Pluto to Jupiter or the square to the sun. There's no more Pluto involved. You don't need to keep going, well, let me keep this on course. It's Venus square Pluto now. It's, where is the different course of action? Where are my values actually going to actually ascend with Uranus at the end of Taurus? There was no Uranus in Taurus here. There was no Taurus. This is where Taurus was a barren strait. There was some cool Taurus stuff, of course, that happened with the sun Jupiter in 2012, but that was about it. It was a dark moon as the solar eclipse at 0 Gemini hit in 2012. And that's exactly where Uranus is going to be coming. And so that brings up, for some, maybe some 2012 stuff. But this was your last full moon in Libra with Jupiter in Cancer. And this was the most intense lunar eclipse full moon. And to think that this just went away, you're an idiot. Meaning, what were all the things you were into as the identification of yourself then? And what is causing you to drift away from that now? Or doesn't like you because you're that person? I hope I inspired somebody out there. That's my goal. And you got to think more than just today's the full moon and that's it. This is our warning sign of like, you've got a week, 2 weeks max to be fully embodied in yourself by that next new moon. Because that's the rocket launch that takes us to the quest of our lives and actually connects us with the people and the energies that actually are in alignment with us. not by just maintaining this, I'm going to sacrifice again, and I'm going to completely identify as, I'm going to give away who I am, and I'm going to settle and stay settling and stay on the hamster wheel. That's not working. All right, let's look at the card for this full moon here. By the way, I put out, I think just 4. There's a lot more of predictions I made in January about this year to show people like, this motherfucker always gets it right. You can see them on every platform. And I'm sure you've been starting to watch them and like, this motherfucker said that. Yeah. The crazier ones I'm going to bring out and make you wait a little bit of time, because what happens coming up here by April 15th and the holy shit moment that follows, that makes us realize by the 26th, holy fuck, there is no going back, is the same in your relationships, is the same in the world, it's the same everything. Now that was a horoscope. Because when Uranus kicks into Gemini, like, we're only going to want to be around energy that is social and with everything kicked into air and fire. And this is what I think is going to be hard for very strong earth and water signs, is like, you guys are not social. And this is going to be a world where you can't get weird because people are social. And where's the interesting energy? And the magic's only going to happen in the social and sparking and of intellect and interest and new technologies and cool new energies and new things that we've never seen before and events that have futuristic shit and shit. Like, that's the only place where it's going to be happening. Everywhere else, and you just like, well, I'm going to play the fucking trad husband or trad wife in Idaho and wait for the fucking moment where I pull out my potato gun and think that's going to save my life. That's not. That's actually the saddest life that you'll probably ever live. Where you have sex once a month minimum, or minimum or maximum, and then you're staring at the fucking street and like, what the fuck? Especially when crops aren't going to be getting their fertilizer on time. Gasoline and diesel. Chiron in Aries was the 70s gas crisis of looking at your fucking license plate and even and odd. I've said this one for years that it would happen during it. It's going to come. You can't be with bonds that aren't prepared to do that together and fucking laugh in the fucking line together. And fuck in the car while waiting in the line. And going into some quantum fucking cool magical shit. And that can handle their own shit as much as you can handle your own shit. That if you can't have that, then what are you doing? And if you're too afraid for that, or you're in the delusion that you can do that, but actually, if that's in front of you and you were to do it and you don't do it, then you have to look at yourself as that you're not ready. And it's not because of the box, like, well, I need more schooling or something. No, you haven't faced all of the Pisces shit that's clearing out right now. Like your own past, your own wounds that really are self-inflicted, and you're still putting blame. You still haven't faced your past. You haven't cleared your past. Because this is about looking forward. For those that just want to keep looking backward, and when that time will come back is really just a trauma that you don't want to face within yourself that you haven't gone back to clear. What do we got card-wise for this full moon in Libra? I should get... Who's the motherfucker who did Deep Love Tarot for years and has the #1 fucking tarot read ever done that was a tarot reading of 1 million views? Nobody's done that one yet, but me. So when it comes to love, all right. The Empress. Oh, this goes exactly with what I was even talking about. The mother kind of nurturing us on the phone, like, yeah, no, your sixth sense is right there, little alien baby. I love this Empress card because it's reminding you of your ultimate value and that anything can be created that truly actually is in alignment with yourself, but you have to own that shit fully. You cannot for 1 second, especially since Venus is in Taurus and feminine. And the Empress card traditionally shows the shield with Venus that's to the side. That this is the moment to own the highest version of yourself, and that everything that you've ever wanted to manifest is waiting for you once you do that. And when you actually Pluto in Aquarius and satellite view out and look at the situations where you're barely hanging on by a thread and you're giving away yourself and you're trying to convince yourself everything's fine, and you realize once I'm out of that and I embody this, everything becomes not just possible, but will shock you in what could show up in your life. And we got the 8 of Swords reversed. Oh my God. That's the only way out of the toxic energy. You will sit in your toxic energy that you keep putting blame on the outside. It's really on you. I like this when it's reversed because it's like finally things start being clear because we're not within our own toxic filth of our own self and in shame, guilt, and also I'm stuck, I don't know what to do. And so the toxicity is taken over, and I guess this is just what it is. That is only going to happen to you if you are not in that place of embodying your highest fucking value in every part of your life and who you actually are. That's what the first house Aries, that's what Taurus is about. That's what the fourth house is about. Jupiter is coming to Leo this year. Then the fifth is then taking that and actually experiencing that. You will not experience it if you do not know how to own your own self and your own value, and you're lying to yourself. Or you're pumping yourself up more than you actually are, and there's no vulnerability of where you're at emotionally, and you're trying to fit in this little box, and you're trying to convince people by shifting your fucking values to align with people and just giving all of yourself away. You can't be that. I'm going to pick one more card just for love in general. I haven't done that in a minute. What pops up? The 3 of Wands. It's time to look out at the horizon at the new ship coming in. Don't be a little beggar, though, like this fucking old dude. Right? But there are other ships of your journey out there. And for you to deny that would be the saddest thing in your life. I appreciate you all. Check me out on highvibe.tv. Hypergate AI, we've got the app. It's the best app in the world. Just Apple has not approved it yet because they do not want any more astrology, tarot, fortune telling, as they call it, apps. Thank God I have a trademark and I have a call with Apple to deal with this shit, but it's been through 3 rejections, and it is the sickest AI astrology app that was ever built because it was by Gemini. And the fucking app itself is even better than the website. So we're in a world now where they don't want any of that on the Apple Store. But your boy has a trademark for mobile apps, astrology, horoscopes, video, AI. Because I have a moon in Taurus. And I know my value. I appreciate it. I love you all very much. Hope to see you on High Vibe, Hypergate, or go and check out all the AI stuff like spirit.ai with Lady Avalon and all that. You can go to leokingai.com for all of my AI products. Peace.
Misery.